Hi everybody, hope all is well. Well, it's time to get started on this Accuphase T-100 tuner, and normally this one's in decent condition, but I normally might try to turn it on, but in this case I'm probably not going to, just simply because things like these controls are frozen solid. Some of them work, but some of them, I know I'll break them if I try to turn them any harder. And it just could be that this thing got some moisture in it or something and corroded or whatever. So let's take it apart and look inside. Okay, and as you can see, just taking the top cover off reveals more covers. Yeah, this thing is very well shielded, and I have a feeling when we get this working, this is going to be a really good performing tuner. So let me dig in a little deeper. Okay, and just like the E202, as you can see, everything is modular and very easy to work on. And I want to make a couple comments on some comments that I got on the E202 video and on the Yamaha, what was it, the KX670 video concerning some components. There were a few components that to me looked to be in very good condition, but a few of you who have more experience on working on these said that some of these capacitors actually do fail and are a known troublemaker, and that they pretty much just replace them even if they're reading good. And I want to share that information with all you. I'm not saying that it's my experience, but usually when you hear comments from several people and they have experience with this, it's a good thing to post it. Again, I'm not in this to show off. I'm in this to share information with you and to learn from you. And in this case, maybe I'm going to learn from some of you. So I'm going to pull two of these boards out because they have similar components. You see these film capacitors right here, these gray ones. They're kind of shiny on the outside. Apparently, they do fail, and they have some problems with them. So I'm going to let you all know about that up front. This one's 4.7 microfarads at 250 volts. That's pretty big for a film cap. But I'm going to probably leave these ones looking at how good a condition they're in. I would imagine that the way they would fail is like some of the dipped film capacitors, that they crack and then you get moisture ingress, but I don't know. That's maybe those of you in the comments section can answer to that a little bit. In addition, I had somebody comment on that. I noticed they're on this board as well. See these little tantalum capacitors? And they made a comment that even though they may not be in a position where they have a lot of voltage on them or anything, that they may still fail because they get tin whiskers inside the tantalum caps. Now, I personally have not heard of that happening, but I don't think it's impossible. I did have a Pioneer SX1050 that in the tone control section, where there was really not much any voltage at all applied across it, I had a shorted tantalum capacitor. So one time I did see a failed tantalum that was not under any kind of voltage stress or anything. So there could be credibility to that as well. So I want to share that information with all of you. But look at the build quality of this, above and beyond all that. I really think these are made very well, personally. For what they are and for the time era that they were made, they were really trying to use the best components they had access to at the time, I think, and still be able to mass produce it. The last comment I'll make is on that Yamaha, on the KX670, and there were some purple colored, very high quality electrolytics that were used in the audio section of that tape deck. And apparently they are a high failure item also. I left them in there mistakenly thinking that they were good, but apparently they are kind of like those other, what are they called? Those ones that are kind of that purpley blue colored. These ones were like a dark purple color, but anyway, that they leak and actually ruin the circuit board. So I will go back and replace those, and thank you whoever it was that brought that up. Anyway, let's get started on this. I'm going to flip this over, take the bottom cover off, and kind of look at those controls before we do anything. You can see how nice condition this is in. It'll probably work just like the E202 did. Okay, I have the bottom off, as you can see. And again, it's pretty sparse under here, but just look how beautifully everything's laid out. I really like this equipment here. Accuphase seems to have done a really good job on these. Everybody's got their own opinions on things, but so far, looks pretty cool to me. So these are the switches that are stuck, and you can see they're just deck switches. And probably what may have happened is the grease in the detent bearings has probably dried up and just kind of glued them together. So we're going to go in and clean that. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that from back here. I may have to take the front faceplate off and take the knobs off to be able to get into the front. But we'll find out as we go along here. That's kind of where we are right now. Okay, so getting this thing all apart. I'm going to try to zoom you in where you can really see what's going on here. These little tabs here on the inside, I don't know if you could see that one in there. There's a couple of them broken off in there. It's really hard to see. I don't even know if you can make it out. But the contacts are broken in here. I really thought I was screwed there for a minute. But as it turns out, I have a brand new one here that is not exactly the same switch. It's got the same inner contact. This one, though, is different on the outside. The outside is good on this one. You can see this one is a 2 position, and you can see that this is missing the third one. This one is a 3 position. So I think if I can remove this mechanism and swap it with this, the wipers are going to be the same. So let's take this apart and see. Let's take them both apart and see. Okay, so focus, please. So you could see how this one snapped off here. I don't know if you could see it. And so I took this one apart, and that's the brand new one. And I believe it will just perfectly fit right on there. Now, the only problem that I see here is this is a different shaft, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to take this out, because you have to take this little clip off here and try to push this through. I don't know if I'll be able to do that or not, but if I can, I'll try to swap those around too. I don't know if you can see. So you got to take this little clip. These are a pain in the butt to get off. And you can take that off, and then I might be able to swap them out. Okay, those clips are not going to come out, but I was able to move the wafer over to this one. I just can't get that clip out. Too hard, and I don't want to break anything. And it moves really well now. I had to soak it in hot water. See, it moves really well. I had to soak this in hot water, and I had to do all kinds of things and put WD-40 down there and everything to get that to loosen up and get that grease out of there. There was grease in all 3 of these, and it was terrible. These ones still don't move, but I noticed that both of these appear to have the contacts are okay on them. I'm just going to have to apply more heat and get some more oil down in them to get them to loosen up, because they're tight. This one, though, I think had more problems than just the grease. It actually had those contacts folded over and broken in there. And you can see how easily that could happen if it catches the edge of this. Because if these little stops, if you turn it beyond the little stop down in here, I don't know if you could see the little stop, but if you get it beyond that little stop down there, it'll run over the end and it will cause all kind of problems. Now the other thing is getting this off. The little pins broke. So I'm going to have to see what I can do about that. This thing is a mess to work on. But if I put this in like this, it should work. Let's see if I can get that in there and see if it'll work. Yeah, it works perfectly. So all I got to do is figure out how to get these tabs to hold on there. We'll figure something out. We'll get that on there, and I think we'll be good. Wow, look at that. I was able to get it to work. And it's like real easy to work now. Okay, so new set of contacts in there. Those, as it turns out, I could not use this one. I was able to get this shaft out of these, and this had pins that were still in good shape. But if you look at the spacing between this is only a one position, so it only goes one click back and forth. That one is 2 clicks, so the stopper was not correct. So I had to make do with the original one, and I just passed a wire through there and around the wafer, and then twist tied it and then soldered it, and it's real solid. That'll last as long as the tuner. Now I have to disassemble and clean these other ones because they are pretty bad. So I think I'm going to have to try to take these apart. I don't know that I necessarily want to do that, because bending these, they'll work hard and then they'll snap off. So I may just have to work with just successive, spraying them and moving them, spraying them and moving them, and just keep going until we get it to loosen up. That's about the only thing I can do. Okay, we're all back together, and they all turn nice and easy now. So, boy, I don't think I've ever seen, other than like in the really old vacuum tube, radios from the 30s, I've never really seen controls freeze up that hard before. I mean, sometimes they'll stiffen up and everything, but these ones were solid. Really had to soak them for a while, but everything's working perfectly now. So I have this thing hooked up, and we're ready to try it for the first time. And we're going to just see how everything looks. So let me plug this in. It is plugged in. And let's turn the power on and see what happens. And there we go. So everything lights up and looks good. I just like the little details that Accuphase did on these things. For instance, when you close the door, there's a magnet inside of this spring-loaded thing. But something you don't see is when you push this in to close the door, it shuts the light off inside there to save the bulb. Just little details like that. I really like this gear. I wouldn't mind working on more of it. So this thing's up and running now, and I have it connected to my outside antenna. And as you can see, it's already pulling in, picking up stations. So let's turn on the amplifier.
This week, some of the best bagpipers
and
in
there
the
you go.
world.
Hey, bagpipes.
Area for the Morale classic George Balder.
Bagpipes.
Many
Very difficult instrument to play. My wife decided she wanted to try that one time, and she bought a chanter, which is kind of the mouthpiece of a bagpipe without the bags and the pipes. Let me tell you something. That was painful to listen to. I wanted to take back things I never stole after hearing that. Hopefully that phase passed, and I don't ever want to encourage it again. Anyway, I digress. So let's see how this thing works. I mean, as you can hear, it sounds really good.
Lecture hall.
And
so, we're very fortunate.
Class expertise. Build
as kids, and even when I was in college traveling back and forth, I always had a map.
Oh, you always had a map.
Yeah. So, and now I make.
Okay, so it is working flawlessly. I mean, I can just tell this is not going to need an alignment or anything like that. And you can tell this is not a real high use, high mileage unit. None of the components are the boards are discolored from heat or anything like that. Like I said, I will replace these electrolytics. I comment that a few of you commented about these Mylar caps, that they can go bad, but these ones absolutely look, I mean, just perfect. I'll unplug one of these boards and I'll show it to you. I mean, the condition of these is exceptional. I mean, the boards have never been worked on. You know, if you didn't know the history of electrolytic capacitors, I would almost want to leave those in as well. If this was mine and I was going to just put it upstairs and use it, I would leave these in, and when they fail, then I would recap it, just because I'm lazy. But since this is going to go to someone else probably, I will at least replace these electrolytics. I know there are some transistors that a few folks have mentioned could fail. I'm probably not going to just randomly replace those because I don't want to have to redo the alignment. I think I'll give this a good test, and if I don't have any failures and I don't notice any problems, I'm probably just going to leave it alone and not mess with the transistors unless I have to. I will go through and check power supplies and make sure that's all good. Make sure none of the heat sinks are running hot or anything like that, you know, kind of like we did on the E202. If it's all good, I'm going to button it up. There's not much more to do. Okay, here's something interesting I thought you'd like to see maybe. I don't know if I can zoom this in close enough or not. If I can, I'm going to freeze the picture once I get it focused so you can see. But take a look at this transistor right here. Actually, look at all of them, all four of these. There's four of them, NPN and PNP. See that one there? This one here. Do you see something strange about that? Look at the leads. If you look right here, the center lead is thicker than the outer leads. That's probably going to be your collector. And notice how there's that black right up there. See that? How it comes right off. And take a look how this is a gold color. That's the copper of the leads up here. Notice that when they tinned these, they didn't tin them all the way up to the top. And you can see this center one, where it's not tinned, whatever that's made of, it corroded very quickly. It tarnished. Probably has some kind of silver plate or something. But the brass or the copper here did not. So you can see that. All four of them did that. And that's not paint. That's actual tarnish on that one. You can kind of see them all down in there. I don't know. There's a good shot of it. So I'm going to clean those off. And should be okay. Or I may just, if I have the correct replacements, I may replace them and not worry about it. But that is what gives you shot noise in a transistor, is when that tarnish gets up inside there, it can ingress all the way into the case. And when it gets up to the bonding wires, that will actually cause problems on the die with the transistor. And you'll get what's called shot noise, or you can get staticky kind of sound or hiss. Now this is a power supply board. But again, it can put noise onto the power supply. I didn't look at the schematic, but I'm sure these are voltage regulators, or used as voltage regulators. So I'm going to look at replacing those possibly. All right, so all the boards have been recapped and they're all cleaned up. This one, I ended up using MJE 340 and MJE 350s. And believe it or not, they are a really good replacement for these little, what are they? 2SC 1166s and 2SA 661. And if you look, the center conductor is bigger diameter lead than the outer ones. That's your collector. So these actually are kind of, they're called a modified TO92 or a TO92 plus or something like that. Bottom line is they're just designed to handle a little more power than a standard TO92 case. So these are actually, they exceed those ratings, and I believe they are very close and other characteristics, so it should work good. I did not have any more of the axial lead capacitors for some of these just because I don't have that many of them, and I didn't want to put in a special order and spend all the money. So I ended up relenting and using some radial lead capacitors, and I just tacked them with some, doesn't look great, but it works well. And I just used this ASI 388. You want to use an electronic grade or a non-acidic silicone if you're going to use this to fasten parts down to a circuit board. When you're using silicone, if you open the tube and you have like a strong, like a vinegar smell, you know, that kind of sour smell to it, that's probably going to be acidic, and that's not good for electronics. So you want to, GE makes a type of silicone that is non-acidic, or you can just buy, you know, the purpose-made stuff. You can buy this on Amazon and eBay. So I got these all done. Nothing special. I just replaced the capacitors, and I replaced these transistors. And you can see, I think I showed it to you, where they're kind of getting that tarnish on them. And that is what I call creeping doom. It will actually go up in there and can really damage the, you know, cause it to get that shot noise. If you notice, when it gets up there towards the top, for some reason, when they tinned it, they just dipped the transistor partially into the tin, but not all the way up to the case. So you can see the brass ones here didn't have a problem with tarnish, but this center one must be some other alloy and it tarnished. Must have silver in it. Anyway, enough of that. I did replace on this board, I did replace the tantalum capacitors just at the suggestion of others. I absolutely don't believe these ones would have gone bad. I do know what people are talking about, that sometimes they go bad. I've never heard of them getting tin whiskers inside of them. That was a first for me to hear that. I have to do a little more research on that. But I do know that these, you know, when they're used as like a bypass capacitor, like on circuit boards for, you know, for like integrated circuits and things, where they put them next to the chips and they have actual voltage, you know, a good bit of voltage there and so forth. I have, those do short. I've seen it a lot of times, you know, especially at work. But I've only seen one instance of where they're just used for filtering, you know, for audio. I've only seen one instance, and it was on a Pioneer SX1050 in the tone control. I saw one of them short out. Only time I've ever seen that anywhere. But anyway, I digress. So let's get these put back in. There are a couple of electrolytics on this board. I'm not sure. I think one or two. I don't know if I'm going to take this board out over here, because this one's a little bit of work to get out. I don't know if I want to disrupt it that much. I might. We'll see. And then these two power supply capacitors. I do have replacements, but I'll have to make a shim to fit it in there, because you can see they're so much smaller. They're just so much smaller diameter than the original. They're a lot shorter, you can see there, and just a lot smaller diameter. Big time. So I'll have to do something there, decide. I'll think about it. Okay, problem solved. It ended up, I had a couple of those Adaptacap modules that you normally use for those CAN capacitors in the vacuum tube amps and stuff. And it just so happened that these fit pretty closely over there. The hole spacing was a wee little bit wider, so I had to pop a new set of holes here, and I just used one of those drill taps and an M3 screw, and it fit perfectly. And you can see it looks pretty good. And if we go around to the back, you can see, no, you can't see, there you go. Looks pretty good. So, problem solved. So just to answer the question of, was it worth recapping this tuner or not? So here's the original 3.3 microfarad capacitor and connecting it up to the tester. Yeah, it's 1.1 microfarad. So it's way off. And just so you know, putting a brand new capacitor in there, 3.3, reads 3.4. So, and as I'm going through these, like here's another one. Here's a, what's this one? 4.7 microfarad. I don't know if it focuses. There we go. So I'll hook this one up. Okay, that one's good. How about this one? Let's see if this one's good. So you just never know with these. There's a bad one. See that? Another 4.7 microfarad. So a lot of these are starting to go bad, as you can see. This is a 1 microfarad, I think. Look, it's half. It's 433 nanofarads. This is supposed to be a 1 microfarad. So these caps are all starting to go bad. And that's why I recapped this thing. You just can't always tell by how one of these things works, you know, or how it looks. Remember, these caps are 40 years old now. They have a shelf life. They wear out. They will wear out with time. Better turn that down. Wow. This thing sounded great when it hit the bench. Now that I recapped it, I have never, I mean, this was probably one of the most noticeable changes in sound quality of any of the things I've had on my bench. Just that simple recap, the high frequency response on this thing is like exponentially better. So that was well worth it. And you saw those capacitors were bad. And it's a crazy thing because you look how clean this thing is. You'd have never guessed it. But there you go. I guess there's a argument for why you recap old audio gear. There's living proof. Okay, I have the covers on and installed an IEC plug just like on the E202. And this thing's all set to go. Cleaned up the jacks, polished them off, and I think this thing's ready to go. Okay, last scene. I couldn't stand it. I was testing this thing out, final test, and this bulb here just kept going in and out. I'd tap it and it would come back in. And all they are is, I don't know where I put the ears on. They're just regular incandescent bulbs, and I guess the filament was loose on this one. You tap it, it would connect, and a minute later come out. So I ended up having to replace the bulbs. So while I was in there, I did fix the pointer. The side lamps were really dim and damaged, you can see. So I replaced those as well. And I didn't have that light kind of aquamarine blue, but I did have the royal blue. So those of you who don't like that can just cry it all out right now. Let it all go. It's going to be okay. We'll be just fine. So here we go. And as you can see, the pointer looks much better now because we can see it. And you can see I have my own little radio station set up so we don't have to worry about copyright strikes. We have a pretty strong signal. Tuning's on center. And that's the color that it was, that greenish blue. And you can see the multipath. There is no multipath because I'm using my little internal. And to do that, I'm using this Sencor SG80. I'm going into the stereo input. I'm giving it the 75 microsecond preemphasis. So it's actually like a real radio station coming out in just a little radiating loop. And then I just have a homemade little antenna. Can hear it buzz when I move it around. And let me start up some audio while I'm holding the camera here. So there you go. So, turned out pretty good. I'm very happy with the way it turned out. All of the controls are really easy to turn. The dial light brightness doesn't make a huge difference, hardly at all. And that's because LEDs really don't care that much about volt. You have to have a huge voltage change to get much of a change in brightness. So it is what it is. Now on the camera, it looks really burned out because, you know, it's just the way these cameras work with the f-stop and everything. But in real life, it's actually a soft color. It's not super bright. It doesn't glare at all. It actually looks really, really good. So I'm happy with it. And if some other folks don't like it, maybe they can find a different color bulb and put in there. I don't know. But I love it. I would leave it like this if this was mine. Anyway, everything's working. It really doesn't need an alignment, and I really have a lot of other work to do, so I'm not going to waste my time on it. I know some of you always like to see every little thing I do that I wish you could do a full alignment and do everything. Can't do it on every single video. I just can't. I don't have the time. So maybe on the next one. There's more tuners to come, I'm sure. One thing I forgot to show you all, so I'm going to add this clip here, is that this tuner actually has a horizontal and vertical scope output to be able to view the multipath and to view the audio. And that's pretty interesting. So you have this multipath, and I'm going to leave the camera on the stand here while I do this, but you can see this meter down here, and it allows you to look at the amount of multipath distortion that you're picking up. Multipath is a reflected radio signal. It's not so you have the direct radio signal coming from the station, and then you have the RF that reflects off of other surfaces between here and the radio station. And the idea is you want to minimize that because that actually adds distortion to the sound. So that multipath meter actually allows you to adjust your antenna to minimize the amount of multipath distortion. But this goes one further, that you can actually view it on a scope. So right now I have a 400 hertz sine wave being broadcast from our little makeshift radio station. You can see the little radiating loop. And the antenna is right next to it, so it's directly picking it up. And you can see that the multipath down here, you can see the needle is clear down by the 0. And if you listen, it's a very pure sine wave. And if you look on the scope, because we can go into the XY mode on the scope, you can see that. See how the XY button there in the middle is pushed in, and you'll get a straight line like that, okay? And if I move the antenna so that I don't have good coupling, I will start to pick up signal that's reflected from the items on my bench. And that's called multipath. So watch as I move this around. I'll turn this on so you could hear it. And if I move this, see that? And see what happens to the waveform? And when I line myself up with it, and see, we're picking up. And if I go right next to it, see what happens? And when we have that multipath, if you go down to the meter, see that? If it'll focus, there we go. So, turn that noise down, and it looks like that. So, it's kind of interesting how that works. But I just thought I'd show you that real quick. So, until next time, I wish you all peace, joy, happiness, and good health in your lives. I'm going to get some other things up here on the bench and get this one off of the bench. And we now have a nice pair of a T-100 tuner and an E202 amplifier, and those will probably be sold as a set, so Dave will be coming to get these, and they'll probably go to a happy home. All right, everybody, you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you all soon. Take care. Bye-bye.